Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. This is going to be a Google tour of a country called Tanzania. So right now we're looking at Africa, and we're going to go ahead and go over to Tanzania, which is this country right here, right on the coast. You can see around it you have other countries like Kenya, Congo that are well known, Mozambique, Madagascar, and here is Tanzania. This type place right here. It's well known because of Lake Victoria, Kilimanjaro, and a lot of different places that are well known. A lot of different refuge, wildlife refuges, and it is quite well known. So what we're going to go ahead and go over are a few different aspects. We're going to touch on education, on gender equality, maternal and health issues for children, disease control, environmental stability, global partnerships, and what role that we can play in developing this country. So let's go ahead and just start off with education. Um, One thing that really surprised me about Tanzania is that its ability to grow. There are many different universities already placed. Um, I have several different ones, such as this one over here in the capital of Dodoma. It's called St. John's University. They have another one over here in one of their other big cities. This is Dar es Salaam, and that one is RT University. You have Hoover, and they have several different other ones as well. Just a little bit about the Tanzanian education system. It's quite similar to ours. Um, this is one of their websites that they have. It's an organization that they have to try to bring education into Tanzania. Um, Another really cool thing that I found, um, just on Facebook actually, there was one of the public schools that they have. Really reminded me of how we actually have our education system set up here in the U.S. Um, just going over a little bit of the information. Um, Tanzania has over about 30 million people, and so their education system it's set up very similar to how we have it, and they have the goal of trying to get everyone at least to have a primary education. So the primary education, it's based on what is called a 7-4-2-3 system. So your primary education is those first 7 years, and then you're going to have 4 years after that for your secondary, and then that will lead into 2 years of ordinary level, which is what they call, and then the 3 years is advanced level. Um, so just doing those things, they're able to be accredited, and they can move into college, and those 3 years that they have, they can become professionals. So just looking at a few of these pictures, they actually seem quite like the educations that we have here, where uniforms are implemented. Um, the styles seem a lot different just because of culture. Um, but this is what they are trying to do. As far as their goal on trying to get everyone educated, let me go ahead and bring that up. So this is what is called the MDG, or Millennium Development Goals. And right here, the second one, go ahead and just zoom that in for you. You have achieve universal primary education. And so they want everyone to be educated. That's their goal right there, to have 100%. And as of 2010, they're at 95.4%, which is actually quite good. Just started seeing when they started um, in the 90s, they only had a percentage of 54%, which was not very good. But we can see that their goal is actually achievable. As far as their other goals in education, they wanted to equalize the amount of girls to boys um, receiving that education. They did have problems before where women, I guess gender issues, would not be allowed to be educated. They would be more kept at home to preserve the family. But now that we see here, they're actually at 112.6%. 7%. So that means that there are more girls in school than guys right now. And so we can actually see that they are doing quite well in that area. Alright, so continuing talking about gender equality, maternal and child health, we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about each one of those. And currently in Tanzania, they do have a problem with maternal mortality rates. Just with this news article, actually have quite a big problem. One of the biggest problems with the mortality rate is that there are not enough doctors in Tanzania. They're severely lacking people that are qualified to be doctors. And just going through this article, you can notice that 23 Tanzanian women die every day from birth-related complications, or one nearly every hour. You're actually getting quite a lot. The statistics are pretty bad as far as that goes. That is one thing that they are working on as one of their goals, that they do want to try to fix to create a better environment for mothers. Let me go ahead and bring that other statistic in there for you. Here we go. Over here it talks about improving maternal health care. Their rates are not very good. They are a whole lot better than they were before. They're at 529, which is quite high. And they've brought it down by almost 100, but their goal is quite, it seems quite unachievable at this moment. And then just looking at this other part, where births are attended by skilled personnel, it is very, very low. About only half of the people are able to have health personnel taking care of them as they give birth. This is much the same problem with other things as far as health. Infectious diseases, HIV, those are all major issues that they do have. Just with this site, you notice that malaria is still a huge issue, especially with a lot of the country being in the area. I believe it's under 1,800 feet where malaria exists, with mosquitoes and just the conditions are right for malaria to produce. And so we see that sort of the lack of the doctors there really creates that problem. They don't have the right facilities able to contain diseases or take care of the water, treat the water. And because of things like this, you do notice that going to the goal of reducing child mortality, their goals are actually achievable. As you notice here, that they were losing about 191 per 1,000 deaths, so that's more than 1 in 10. It's like 1 in 5 right there. They've actually reduced it to about 1 in 10. They do have a goal of 64, so that's 1 in 20. That goal is achievable for them. They're trying very hard for that. And we're going on with disease. One of the biggest problems that they do have is with HIV and AIDS, and this directly correlates with gender-based violence. Because it is still an issue, it's quite a large issue that they do have. The spread of HIV and AIDS needs to be tamed in Tanzania. Just going over a few of their statistics, that Tanzania actually has one of the largest HIV outbreaks in the world right here. It is 7.2% amongst adults aged from 15 to 49. So you have a large amount of people right there. 1.4 million people are currently living with HIV in Tanzania. And just going back to this, blog article. Um, Secretary Clinton said, "We cannot stop the epidemic of HIV unless we also address the epidemic of violence against women." And that is the way that they will have to address HIV in Tanzania, is when they bring equality for women into view. Okay, going on with um, talking about HIV/AIDS, is to bring out one of the Millennium Development Goals is to combat HIV and AIDS. In Tanzania, you see that the HIV prevalence for that age group, as well as this one, um, their goal is actually achievable. They have been doing a whole lot better, but HIV is quite a problem still in Tanzania. Along with these sort of diseases, Tanzania is working to bring vaccines in for. They're trying to get them administered. Um, there are many people who are working against these sort of diseases, especially like with quotes like this from a lot of doctors and directors. There's no reason children should be dying of vaccine preventable diseases. The global vaccines community could be doing a lot better to make sure all babies in developing countries are fully vaccinated against killer diseases. We need vaccines that are easier to use in hard to reach places. So you do have a lot of people that are working towards bringing those vaccines into places like Tanzania. Um, Along with those doctors working together, you do have a lot of private firms that are joining together to combat against diseases such as malaria. Just looking at some of these statistics, you do see that a lot of what they do is actually making a difference. You see that it goes from 18% in 2007 to 2008 to only 10% in 2012, or 2011, 2012. So that is quite a big difference that we do see there. So we see that a lot of their efforts are going towards and being effective in preventing diseases. All right, switching over a little bit to the environmental sustainability of Tanzania. You do see here that Tanzania does have a lot of um, reserves, parks, game reserves, and just areas that will have to be preserved. Tanzania does have a lot of resources that will be accessed in the future just as technology gets implemented into the country. They are trying to get the country, the people, farmers, they're trying to get them educated on how to farm safely so they do not destroy the ground as they are farming. That has been a huge problem in just Africa in general, where farmers they actually they overuse the ground where they farm, and in the years following, they have a famine because all the nutrients are taken out of the ground. They do not use the correct fertilizers, and so we see that they are trying to educate farmers to be able to use the ground wisely with caution. And we do see that with a lot of this new land being used, that a lot of other countries are actually looking towards those sort of things. Many of the government are actually suggesting that Tanzania will longer military just to be able to protect those natural resources. Just in this first paragraph, you notice that they have discoveries of uranium gas, ongoing oil exploration, which is actually quite a big thing, as I'll show you in just a minute. And now Tanzania is becoming vulnerable to attacks from outside, and so they do need to keep expanding their armed forces to be able to protect their investments and ensure the growth of the country. Okay, and as far as other parts of the natural resources that Tanzania does have, they do have quite a bit of oil and places that will require drilling to retrieve those natural resources. Just looking around, you do see other areas. This is around the Serengeti. You have other places all around close to the lakes and areas. But more importantly, their coastlines. You do see that a lot of companies have, or they're trying to section off areas where they can drill. You have Shell, which is actually a big one here in the US. You have Petrobras, which I recognize from going to Brazil. And you just have a lot of other companies that are trying to compete for those resources. You have a lot of companies that are going to have to work in Zogos or other areas that are actual reserves, so they're going to have to work around not destroying the environment. Alright, so just going off of the whole idea of having their natural resources accessed by other companies, a lot of them are foreign companies that are bidding on those areas to be drilled. A lot of what has happened in Africa is that countries have been exploited because of their natural resources. One of them is Nigeria. Just with this article, it talks a little bit about how Nigeria had um, been exploited by several different companies because the money does not, most of the money I should say, does not come back and go into the country that the resources are being taken out of. A large sum of the money goes directly to the companies, and the companies, they take it wherever they want, and they do not use it on the country, the home country of resources. So Tanzania will, there's a possibility that they will lose out on a lot of their natural resources without seeing a return. Especially with the discoveries that are going on, a lot of countries are looking towards accessing those resources. But we do see a lot of um, political turmoil and relations with other countries around Tanzania. Several of the countries have had problems, especially in the past, such as Rwanda. One such problem that they do have currently is that one of the bordering countries, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, they do have a group that is trying to overthrow their government, and they are trying to petition the Tanzanian troops to help keep the peace. The United Nations is looking into that, and they have asked Tanzania to go and help them. Tanzania does have other relations that they are trying to increase with other countries. Such as Mexico, they are trying to work together to benefit both of their areas. Another country, probably the biggest one, is actually China. They are investing quite a bit in Africa, especially because of all the natural resources that they might be able to profit on. Just as the first sentence right there says that they are projected to surpass 200 billion US dollars in exports to just Africa. And then just going down the article, you can see that the imports include iron ore, white copper, steel. They do have quite a lot of different resources that they are invested in. You have more than 20 companies from China that are investing in all sorts of different areas, just as it says, instruction, agriculture. And so they are receiving a lot of help and investments from the Chinese, which will actually be awesome for Tanzania as they are able to develop and create a stable infrastructure. And one thing to point out with Tanzania, it is a growing country. They are um, introducing all sorts of new things. One of the big things, they are developing their internet services. They actually need to improve them, which is awesome for everything. They are a 3.0 country and are able to talk with the rest of the world at a personal level, not just at a business level. And by doing that, you can see that they are able to better market themselves, get the resources, get the information that they need to do everything. There's actually a personal blog from a Tanzanian, and you can see it's all in Swahili. There are a few parts in English. This one talks about poaching, which is a pretty big deal over there right now. And just with these sort of blogs, you can notice that Tanzania, it does have that potential to grow, especially now that they are able to incorporate the internet investments from other countries. You see that they are developing these global partnerships, which is awesome. I was even able to find a website where just anyone can go ahead and invest in Tanzania. You have your opportunities, it gives you the reasons why. They do have all sorts of information. You can look at the investment incentives, and you can actually choose where you want your money to go, whether in agriculture and mining and drilling, and you can just go ahead and invest in Tanzania, which is kind of cool. Alright, so for the last part of this presentation, I want to go ahead and explain a little bit on what I want to do to be able to help out my new adopted country of Tanzania. Me, myself, right now, I am currently an electrical engineer, or at least training to become one. So I deal with all the things that consider electricity and the possibilities therein. So I'm trying to work towards working with the generation of power and the distribution of that with regards to the environment and the correct use of resources. Um, in doing that, you can notice that I'll probably be working with things such as power plants, um, working to get energy to the homes in Tanzania, and that is what I am looking forward to in the future. So as we see, just with this map, it's a map showing the different reserves, the parks, the natural resources that they are trying to preserve. And then if you look at this map, which includes places that they are actually drilling for oil and gas, we see that a lot of it will be taken away just because of gas. This doesn't show any like mining for minerals, which will happen up here in the Arusha area. But they do, and they are taking parts of natural reserves, such as the Zelos Game Reserve. If you can notice those two differences right there. One of the things that I look forward into researching is a better way to produce that energy. The natural gas is a reliable resource. It does produce 24/7, which is what people need. They're looking into alternative energy sources such as the use of rivers, but you can see that Tanzania doesn't have a whole lot of that to be able to rely on. They do work with wind as well, but as we know that solar power and wind power, they do take a lot of land area, and they do not produce at a constant rate. Another option that they do have is nuclear. There are quite a few problems with that now. Just looking at North Korea or Iran, the UN does not sanction such things. That is mostly due to problems with the creation of nuclear weapons. They do include the idea of nuclear waste and the potential of destruction, such as in the recent Japan, where the nuclear reactors overloaded and it created quite a big problem for them. So just looking around, what I actually want to do is look for alternative methods. Nuclear power is probably the way that the future will go, but there is a better source instead of uranium, which it's in the use of uranium reactors. They're able to use you can use that to create bombs. But there is another item called thorium, which is something I'm looking into. It's an alternate to uranium. The process is a little bit different. The prices are a little bit cheaper, and let me go ahead and bring in the pros and cons so you can see those. Okay, so for thorium, it's actually really good because it doesn't have the byproducts of, say, coal. It doesn't burn like gas, so it's a carbon-free operation. It is safer than the light water reactors, such as in Japan. They do have a system set up so that if it does overreact, it doesn't rely on electrical systems to shut it down. It has a melt safe, so once it gets too hot, a piece will melt and all of the fuel salts that they need to heat will actually be cooled automatically. It is chemically stable. It's a lot safer than uranium. The reason why thorium wasn't used before is because uranium, at the time, it was perfect because it was at times during war. They were able to harvest the uranium at the same time as produce energy. So they were able to produce energy and use those resources to create bombs. And another thing is that it runs around the clock. Unlike solar energy or wind power, it is a constant. The cost is relatively low. It is still a new resource that they're looking into, so there will be extra costs as they create it. It is less suitable for weapons. It still is, but it is harder to create weapons out of thorium. Right now it is at this demonstration, but the cons of using thorium, it is a non-renewable fuel. So although it is found in a lot more places than uranium, with uranium they estimate that they have about 80 years just on the crust of the Earth, 80 years worth of uranium left on the planet. With thorium, they do believe that it does have about 1,000 years, so it is quite a bit more common. It still does produce hazardous waste, but it is a lot less than uranium. You can still use it for nuclear weapons, but it is a lot harder. It is different from the current technology, so they will have to incorporate it, which does pose that problem. Like all big power plants, it could be a terrorist target, especially with Tanzania, where they do need to go ahead and invest in the military to go ahead and protect what they have. It is not a commonly used technology, so it can't just be implemented automatically. It still needs to be refined. And so that is what I want to do to go ahead and benefit Tanzania. I want to go ahead and create an energy source that they are able to use and implement. In Tanzania, they do have electricity, but it is quite unstable. They do have many times throughout the week where the power has to go off so they can create repairs. They have different programs that they are trying to incorporate electricity into outlying communities. And I want to go ahead and further that production so that they do have the basic essentials for their life met. And that is the Google presentation for Tanzania. Thank you.